Hi folks, how you doing? Let us see in this second part of this video how this Anand Carlsen fourth game of the World Championship match did end, now that they have finished playing. We left the game here when after on 27th move, Anand having the white pieces played this knight b5 move, threatening to attack the c7 pawn with either rook c1 or rook c2. Let's just remember this was a Berlin defense. There were Rui Lopez opening in the Berlin defense. Magnus Carlsen with black grabbed the pawn on a2, and white is struggling to find the compensation. Otherwise, black will unchain his pieces and have an advantage and try to win a more simple endgame. So knight b5 played here. Something like knight e4 was also an idea, to maybe go to g5. Probably try to advance to e6 and get a strong passed pawn, attack the f7 pawn as well from g5. But okay, knight b5 also a useful move at this point, as we saw. Engines were favoring black a lot, but Anand was really finding some strong moves, trying to defend as well as he could and find some compensation. At this point, Magnus played h take g4. Now, if you're sure that you're going to defend the threats here on the queen side, where your king is sitting here on b7, it is a good idea to take on g4 and activate this rook on the h file. Another interesting line was just kicking the knight out of there just right away with a6, knight d4, and after that the engine suggests this interesting move a5. Now that taking advantage of that tempo that white has wasted to get the knight back to d4, now the possibility of playing a4 is a real one, trying to activate this rook just the same way that this other one is trying to do, without moving from the initial square. A very efficient way of developing the rooks. So funny that both black rooks are trying to get activated this way. And something like knight b5 wouldn't be that effective now, because after taking, a4 is already a move. Just this pawn is going either to take on b3, activating all this file for the rook, or even advance. So rook c1, knight c6 was probably defending c7 well enough, and as we saw, this pawn will either advance or take here on b3, activating this rook. And at this point, probably black is better, much better. I mean, probably the advantage is clear. But instead, h take g4, also very logical. And after recapture, rook h4, simple move, just attacking the pawn on g4, threatening to take it and bringing the rook into the game. Once again, a6 was another possibility. After knight d4, a5, knight b5. Now transposing into something very similar, the same position in fact. But okay, Carlsen didn't went for that. He went for rook h4 and knight f2, protecting the pawn on g4. There was another way of protecting it with the rook, but it was not worth that energy to waste this rook to protect just a pawn. So knight f2, much more efficient way of defending the pawn on g4. Now black goes knight c6, multi-purpose move, first attacking the pawn on e5, but also controlling a little this d4 square, so that after a6 the knight can't go there without being exchanged. So basically the exchange would favor here black, because he would get rid of some pieces. As he is pawn up, he would have a favorable and more simplified endgame. After this, there were a couple of options here for white to to defend the pawn directly, but putting a rook here on the e file, or to defend it indirectly, just x-raying the c7 pawn and making the knight, just pinning the knight and making it impossible to take the e4 pawn. And Anand went for this for the late option, just playing rook c2. I think it doesn't really matter if you put the rook on the second or on the first rank on the c file. And now the knight is pinned. c7 is x-rayed, so maybe more active than defending passively on the e file. And here an interesting move was played, e5, just with the same idea we just saw in the previous previous line, trying to activate the rook without moving it from this initial square from a8. A very funny way to activate both rooks for black. Something something which could happen probably in these Berlin endgames sometimes, where black pieces are not that regularly developed, but he finally black will always find some play somewhere to develop them correctly. Other alternatives were once again something like a6, where black would have to white would have to attack the c6 pawn, the c6 knight, sorry, and maybe after something like bishop d7, advancing the pawn, the bishop, if the bishop goes to e8, the knight would have this d4 move, distracting the knight from c6, and black wouldn't be able to take it, as this leads to a simple checkmate, which Magnus wasn't really going to fall into. But instead of bishop d7, there was this another option of here instead of bishop e8, black could take on b5, and after taking on d7 the bishop, the knight is still hanging, but after protecting it with something like rook h6, black would probably take the pawn on d7, and still not sure if white is finding his compensation, but certainly another interesting possibility. After rook h6, this pawn is on d7, and more or less, although it's on 7th rank, it could be weak, potentially weak, because these two pieces, the knight and the king, aren't near enough. Another possibility maybe was, instead of f5, playing something like g6, trying to break this pawn majority of white here with some exchange, more or less similar ideas, and bishop a8, just keeping everything protected, or just rook h6, that protecting the knight on c6, and also taking a look on this e6 square, which could potentially be important when white tries to advance here the pawn and try to create a passed pawn. But anyway, a5, a very logical move as well. Now Anand took his time here to think. He was probably realizing that he has to come up with a concrete plan. He can't just let black develop like that and get some activity to prevail with his pawn. So rook c4, multi-purpose move, just protecting g4 and preventing a4 from being played, and g6, very logical in this kind of structure, just trying to disrupt this pawn structure, this pawn majority, 3 against 2 on the king side. And if he succeeds so, and the resulting passed pawn isn't very dangerous, black will have a serious advantage, because he will get his rook out, he will get his bishop out of the 8th rank, and the advantage will be very important. Rook dc1 was played here, just attacking the knight twice. Some other possibilities, we could have this e6 advance, which was always in the air. After something like f take e6, rook dc1 was once again a possibility, when after bishop d7 defending, going back would transpose into the similar lines we just saw. But instead, if white takes immediately on e6, bishop could take on e6, and here some tactical tricks would probably favor white, as he could take on c6, and after taking, knight d4 check, black would have to go back to b7. Otherwise, this discovered check taking the rook is favorable for white. So there were the activity always was bringing white some possibilities. Some tactical tricks were always there. But okay, Anand went for doubling for these rooks on the c file, was also very logical. Bishop d7, just defending, and now he went for e6, take, bishop e8, And now knight g4, another knight e4, sorry, another very crucial moment in the game. Anand was already down on time here, maybe down on less than 10 minutes as far as I remember, and he was just struggling not to lose the initiative and have enough compensation. And this was, as we will see, a very important move. He's just giving up another pawn, the g1, just to activate his knight and the king. Magnus thought for a while and he took the pawn. King f2, an important move. Now the threat is to win the rook or either the exchange, depending on what black do, with some moves. Kind of there's a possibility of playing checking on d6 with some of the rooks and taking with both with both knights, checking on d6 with both knights and taking the rook on g4, or check on c5 directly after recapture, taking to take on g4. So these kind of things were in the air. Carlsen here went on to check once again, and king e3. Now suddenly this knight and king are much better situated at the cost of a pawn, of course. Black is up 2 pawns right now, and at this moment, more or less, it seems that Magnus kind of wasted his advantage, his chances. He went on with rook f8, putting the rook into much more passive square than he was on f4. It seems that g5 was a better move, just protecting the bishop, the rook on f4, where of course taking is not an option because black would attack both rooks, both knights on the 5th rank, and it seems overall that g5 was giving black still a nice comfortable advantage there, and white would have to just fight a little bit more to find the equality, to find the compensation for the pawn, in this case 2 pawns. But instead Magnus went to f8 back on the 8th, and here after knight d4, where the c7 pawn is x-rayed and the knight will probably have to take on d4. Anand probably felt very relieved as it seems that he has solved more or less his most of his most of his problems. And as we could see in the live transmission, the live streaming, the body language was very clear here. And at this point, Magnus clearly was showing that he had miscalculated or overlooked something. He looked really disappointed. He knew he had left something asleep. Knight takes d4, rook takes d7, check, an intermediate move, and king e6. Now king takes d4, and rook d8 check. Now time control has been reached, and Anand, well, at least at the first sight, at least he seems to have solved most of his problems. He is still pawned down, but his king and knight are much better situated, and this black king on e6 doesn't look that great. At this point, well, Anand obviously had much more time. He wasn't on time trouble anymore, and it seemed that king e3 was more or less the logical move, keeping the king in the center, just protecting these important squares. But Anand went with king c3, surprising at the first sight. It seems he's just cutting the communication between his rooks, allowing this check, allowing this rook to reactivate himself once again. Obviously, king e5 wasn't going to be played. It was funny. This was a checkmate in 1. But okay, king c3, a little bit surprising. But the point maybe is that he's getting nearer to this potential 2 against 1, to this potential passed pawn of black. So he would like to have this king here in a later, more simplified endgame. Carlsen went on with rook f3 check, king b2, and rook e3. Now threatening to take this knight, and also threatening somehow to double rooks, attack somehow a little bit here on the 3rd rank. This pawn on e6 is obviously what is keeping white in this game, because if he hadn't this pawn, obviously this would be very, very difficult to defend. He would be 2 pawns up, 2 pawns down, and even if this pawn wasn't here, just a little bit not that far away, so it could be a problem because it's in the 6th rank, and this is what is giving lots of counterplay to white, to keep playing, not to be lost already. Rook c8 was played here, a line that was more or less supposed to be equalizing at this point, at least it would seem so. e7 was a little bit more complex. Rook d3, and after protecting the b3 pawn, it is not that clear what's going on here, because this pawn is strong but could be potentially taken. And well, Anand didn't really want to go this way. Rook c8, and Carlsen decided to bring the rook back to d3 down, attacking at the same time the bishop, the knight on d4, on e4, sorry, and the pawn on b3. Had he taken on c8, this was more or less a simple endgame where both these pawns will be exchanged, and this 2 against 1 is not going to be enough to win because the king is well situated. Now we see the point of king c3, rook to d3, and now rook a8 check, king b7, and taking the bishop, taking the knight, and we got a pure rook endgame where Anand will try to exchange a pair of rooks, where in which case his possibilities of surviving would be much higher. Obviously, the point is that now this king is well situated against this potential passed pawn. So this is what, together with this passed pawn, what is giving white lots of chances of surviving this slightly worse endgame. e7 was played here. Really, nothing really that strong going on here. Just both players, especially white, had to be just careful not to slip and not to let something really strange happen. Not to lose. Black was playing for 2 results. There is absolutely no way he was going to lose this. Rook g3, just preventing maybe the white rook from going to the to the g file and attacking the g pawn. Rook c3, trying to exchange some pieces. And of course, Carlsen is a very stubborn player. He knows he has a little bit advantage. He will play it until the end. He's not willing to exchange. He checks first. Had he exchanged, rook takes c3, king takes c3. Once again, it is not easy because black has this 2 against 1, but he has to be careful as well because he has to stay here on this. He can't go out of these 2 squares with the king. Some careless and silly moves like king a6 would fall into this famous theme on the rook endgames, where white checks and takes his time to queen. So obviously this was not going to happen, but instead something like g5 could go on. But after the rook g8, after these exchanges, we're going to head again to this more or less drawn endgame. But okay, so that's why Carlsen didn't go for this. He checked for the time being, rook c2, and he goes back. Now king a2, an interesting move. So just now black, if he takes on b3, it wouldn't be a check, and we would have more or less the same theme. The white rook would slide here, checking and promoting to queen, kind of this way. So that was not going obviously to happen. Rook d and g5 was played here, advancing the passed pawn on the g file. Rook d2, just trying to maybe go back there and check a little bit the black king, just win some tempies. Rook e5, protecting that pawn, preparing to double this on this e file maybe. Rook d7 check. Rook e d8 was played here, threatening to promote. Maybe another possibility, not a bad move, was going back to with the rook to d2 and maybe checking on the next move on c8 and forcing black into this corner once again and sitting there and waiting. But okay, he went with this idea of trying to or threatening at least to promote. Obviously Magnus goes there not to let him. Couple of checks, rook a6, and here rook d5, trying to exchange rooks once again. Once again, there are, I think, more moves which would not lead to a big problem for white, like rook g6, just attacking that and prepare maybe to double on this 6th rank. But okay, knight rook d5, a good move as well. Now check, going to a3, and now rook e6, preparing a little trap, which of course Anand was not going to fall into, but at least he had to think about it. The trap is something like if white plays very careless and something like b5, let's say another waste move, and black would have this little mating net. After this, white has no square to go and he's checkmated. Obviously, the world champion wasn't going to fall for this. He went for this rook d8. g4 was played, and after this, it was more or less clear that black didn't have that much to win the game. After rook g5, white is going to take this g pawn. Black is going to take the e1, and pretty much straightforward moves were played. At this point, they just did go ahead to exchange pawns until this position was reached. The 64th move, funny enough, and the draw was agreed at this point. And what can we say? Another fighting, another exciting games. I think more than 6 hours of game. A very exhausting one, but definitely worth watching. And the rest day they're going to have tomorrow, a very deserved one. If we're going to have lots of draws, at least they could be like this one and the previous one, not like the games we had in the first game, the first day. So funny enough, in these games so far, the 4 games, black has been much better. It has been either Anand or Magnus with black pieces had been pressing, and here in this game and as well and yesterday's game, both of them were in the verge of winning with black. So there we go, another draw. 4 games so far, 4 draws. Hoping for more exciting chess on the next game. Still lots of games to be played. Tomorrow is a rest game, and we'll hope to have a more exciting and fighting chess like this one, like this game we had today. So what else can I say? Nothing else. Thanks for watching. Hope to see you on the next games. See ya.